My grandparents had this tradition that every evening after around 7 p.m., we would all gather up in my grandfather's bed and we would all play cards together. So I don't care if you have schoolwork, if you have a show coming on, it doesn't matter. You sit with everyone for half an hour and you play cards before
Hi
dinner.
everyone, welcome back to Chai Chats. I'm Akil, your host, and I'm very excited to have a special guest and dear friend of mine, Gauri Taneja. Gauri is a recent graduate from the University of British Columbia, and she comes from Dehradun, Uttarakhand. So she will be on with us today for this episode and discuss more about her cultural upbringing and, her life in general. So we're really excited to have you on, Gauri. So that's awesome. I'll pass it over to you to introduce yourself.
Yeah. Thank you firstly for the introduction. It's really great to be here. Thank you for having me. My name is Gauri. I'm from Dehradun, Uttarakhand, and I immigrated to Canada to complete my education. So I earned my bachelor's degree in materials engineering here at the University of British Columbia. During my time at UBC, I worked with the Faculty of Applied Science in Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. And I think my cultural identity has changed a lot over the years. And this is such an amazing opportunity for me to even self-explore and share that with you today. So thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm so excited. Thanks for being here as well. And I think what we can do is get right into our chai chat. So, um, I guess for a lot of your viewers, that are outside of India and want to get a taste of the life in Dehradun, what was life like, growing up? I know it's probably been some time since you've last been back, so if you could tell us, yeah, what life was like and maybe how it contrasts with living in.
One of the aspects of life in Dehradun that really stays with me is the aspect of community and how everyone is very close and it's very tight knit.
Mm,
And of course, I grew up there, and it's the sense of community that we had growing up was really strong. And it's just when you think of your family or how much time we spent together as a family, so my parents and my grandparents, we all used to live together, and uh, that sense of closeness was something that tied us together from as long as I can remember. So we had small traditions in our home every day. We would eat our meals together. We would play. My grandparents had this tradition that every evening after around 7 p.m., we would all gather up in my grandfather's bed and we would all play cards together. So I don't care if you have schoolwork, if you have a show coming on, it doesn't matter. You sit with everyone for half an hour and you play cards before dinner. And even after dinner, my brother and I used to sit near my grandfather, and he would tell us, we would play different games. We would play Atlas, and just I feel very nostalgic just sharing this. And then I think stemming a little bit, or rather expanding a little bit from my home, even our neighbors and all the um, all our neighbor kids we used to be really close to. So every evening at around 5, we would have it. Just we had a little tradition. So my mom would make snacks for us, and we would all gather in either our house or someone else's house and play together or watch. It's gonna sound silly, but we used to watch Pokemon together for the longest time.
yeah.
Um, so there's lots of aspects um, of that community that I really miss in Canada, or that now I think I've built here as well. But it's one of the values or one of the most beautiful things that I carry with me wherever I go.
Wow.
And I think another aspect that I would share about life in Dehradun is just um, how beautiful it is and how it's surrounded by mountains, which was one of the things that attracted me to Vancouver right away. I'm like, "Okay, this is reminding me of home. I can be here." It's just from our roof, you could see beautiful, it's nestled in the Himalayas, so you could see really beautiful mountains just if you go up on our roof. And um, it's a valley, so anywhere you go, you have to cross mountains. So I think growing up, that was also a really important part for me, and something I really cherish. And I have so many memories with my family, just traveling around and um, doing hikes, which I hated as a kid, but my dad loved, so it's fine. But yeah, really good memories of those two, and good food. But I think I'm gonna save some of the remaining stories for the rest of this chat.
Super excited. It's interesting you say, in I guess living in India, living even in like in Asia, even
Yeah.
um, it's growing up in large families, that's something that's so innate to the culture, right? But when you're in
Mhm.
Canada or even the US, that's something you have to build and it takes time. I'm sure like that must have been sort of was that a shock to see that stark difference in sort of the more individual living in Canada versus the communal living in India?
It's a little bit, for me, it's been a bit tricky because when I moved from India to the US, that sudden emptiness did hit, and then it stayed with me for a while until I came to Canada, and then I um, realized that those values that are really important to us growing up. It's important that we bring those values with us, and um, it's a conscious decision that we have to take to celebrate festivals, or to bring even um, those things that we see at home, those elements of love and care for people around us, and that sense of community. And I realized it's not something that automatically travels. It's something you
Yeah.
have to build, and it takes time. For me, it took a very long time, but I'm finally in a place where I can definitely say that Canada is another home for me. And friends in Vancouver are another set of family that I have here. So I'm so glad at this stage to have that. So it was a difference, but I think it's you taking that choice, making that decision, or making a choice that you need to bring those values with you, and uh, be a little bit less. Like, it's a conscious decision of being less individualistic and being more together with people. So it came over time, but I think it's sinking in now. So I'm happy to reconcile both of those parts of my identity here.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess I'm curious then what were some ways that you did take across oceans, I suppose. If you could go back to um family back home and you mentioned with your grandfather, there was that expectation of having that continuity and playing cards, but that also instills the commitment to
Yeah.
elders, for example. And could you share more about, some of those values that really, spoke out to you and were carried over into your life in Canada?
Mhm. So I think there are a few. Um, Let me think. A key aspect that I thought that I had forgotten for a very long time is bringing everyone together in the same room and celebrating something. And I used to love this quality of my parents, that wherever they would go, they would have a celebration. So I remember sometimes sitting here in Canada and they're having their New Year's Eve celebration, and it's big, and
Yeah.
ours is very low key. And it's an amazing quality that they have, and one that I'm trying to bring into my own life also. Um, so I think recreating those things. So last year, for me, celebrating Diwali is
Yeah.
it's my highlights of the year. And I realized that over the years, I'd stopped celebrating it. I would make excuses, and I would think, oh, I'm too busy. I have this midterm
Mm.
or that midterm. But those are going to come and go. But it's the memories that you create on these festivals with the people that are close to you. These memories are going to stay for longer. So I think that the first time after a very long time, where I felt, okay, I have those values that my parents and grandparents instilled in me, was with hosting Diwali last year at my place. And it was like 10, 12 people. You were one of them. With all of these people and lots of food. And I remember I called my mom and I asked her for all the, like all the details that um, I wanted to do all the ceremonies with
Yeah.
exactly those details. So I called her and what is the order the things are done and what are the materials I need? Tell
Yeah.
me everything. So I remember like I had been witnessing uh, my parents and my grandparents doing Diwali for all of these years, but I never actively held a celebration of my own. I attended celebrations, but I didn't take the initiative until last year to host something by myself. And I think one of the um, and I think it was very satisfying for people to hear, oh, you know how you visit this friend or a cousin or relative away from home, and
Yeah.
they go into their home, and you feel suddenly like you're transported
Yes.
back home. So I think that was
Yes.
so heartfelt and definitely one of my favorite nights here in Canada is creating that experience for someone else and for all of you. I think that was something I'm gonna cherish for a while.
Um, so I also wanted to delve a little more into the culture of Uttarakhand. As I was doing my research online, trying to get a sense of the food, but also the various cultural groups. I came across, Gwalior culture and, some of
Yeah.
the different other tribal um, groups within Uttarakhand. If you could maybe paint us a picture of the kinds of celebrations that are indigenous to Uttarakhand, or some of the celebrations you really enjoyed with your family.
Mhm. Yeah, so as you know, if you look at our calendar, there's festivities throughout the year. And I think aside from the big festivals of Holi and Diwali, I think there's a lot more to be. There's only, if you think about it in terms of what travels from India all the way to other countries, is very little. And I think um, there's so much more to uncover there. And festivities are a really big part of it. So for us, my family, we celebrate most of the Punjabi festivals, and there are a lot of indigenous festivals um, that are a part of Garhwali or Kumani culture, and then some festivals are a little bit mixed. So we celebrate them, and they also celebrate those festivals. But I think for this particular question, or at least something that I'm gonna point out before I delve a little bit deeper, is um, I think given that my family identifies as Punjabi or Hindu, it's hard to. I think I'm not the best person to speak of a lot of indigenous uh, or like the Garhwali and Kumani cultures because again, I'm not a great representative of those, but I can definitely speak to some of the festivities that we engaged in our schools and ones that are really important in those or really observed in those areas. So I think one of my favorite ones is Vasant Panchami. So it's a celebration of arrival of spring, and we worship goddess Saraswati. And everybody wears yellow. So even in our school, we used to have a celebration, and the school choir would sing songs, and there used to be a puja at the beginning of the day. And I think another one that is also and some of these festivals actually overlap in uh, like there are festivals that are celebrated in North India as a whole. And another one I think is that I really enjoyed celebrating as a kid is Lori.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah,
the ending of the winter solstice, and that spring is going to come soon, and days are going to get longer. And I remember once calling all my there was no Lori celebration happening that year, so I called all my neighbors, and I gathered chairs, and we lit a fire, and we had a whole celebration. It was really nice, and especially in the winter months, it's celebrated in January or February. So that light of the fire signifies that the sun is going to be a bigger part of our lives for the rest of the year. And I think some of the other festivals that are really common, or actually that are really prevalent to Dehradun itself, is Kumbh Mela. So it's a lot of pilgrims coming from all over the country to visit the Ganga River.
yes.
So there's one, and there's a 3 to 4 month long celebration where there's food, there's festivities, there's it's a very long and elaborate festival, and it's celebrated in Dehradun every year. So these are some of the ones that are very common to Dehradun and Uttarakhand and mostly celebrated aside from, and of course there are a lot more festivals, but these are some of the primary ones that I loved celebrating when I was a kid.
Seems like you have something every day, and I feel like that's very sort of reflective of even going into the conversation of Sanatan Dharma, right? Or Sanatana Dharma, where you can have an infinite number of ways of connecting with the divine. None are sort of above or below, just for each individual or for each household or for each community, there's their own personal ways of connecting with each other, with the divine through celebration. And I kind of want to shift this conversation now into how you identify with Sanatana Dharma